Hello, you are listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. You can find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com and unlimitedenergynow.com. While you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how you can heal yourself naturally. Now, if you've had trouble sleeping, and let's face it, who hasn't had trouble sleeping at one point or another, this is going to be a really super important show for you. Our guest today is Dr. Michael Breus. You can find out more about Dr. Breus at his website, www.thesleepdoctor.com. Dr. Breus is the author of 3 best-selling books, including The Power of When. And in my view, Dr. Breus has some really important information and real groundbreaking information to change the way that you think about yourself when it comes to sleep. Welcome, Dr. Breus.
Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
So, Dr. Breus, how does someone actually become a sleep doctor?
That's a great question. So there's actually several different paths. I had somewhat of a unique path in becoming a sleep specialist myself. So to give everybody a little bit of background on me, I have a PhD in clinical psychology, but I'm board certified in clinical sleep disorders. There was a period of time for about 3.5 to 4 years where non-MDs could take a medical board without going to medical school. And I was one of 168 people who was able to take the board and pass. Then they closed that window, so that's not available to people anymore. So 90% of the sleep specialists out there are MDs, and a large percentage of them are lung doctors or pulmonary doctors because they deal a lot with sleep apnea and snoring. Some are cardiologists, some are psychiatrists or neurologists who might deal with things like narcolepsy or restless leg syndrome. And one of the areas of specialty that I happen to purport to is insomnia. So I use my psychology background with all of my sleep science background to be able to give my patients sort of the best understanding of what's going on with their insomnia.
So again, this is very important information. And if you're in our audience, you can learn more about Dr. Breus in his 3 best-selling books, Good Night, The Sleep Doctor's Diet Plan, and The Power of When. And I'm a raving fan of The Power of When.
Thank you.
Yes. And you can go to thepowerofwhenquiz.com to discover what sleep type you are.
Yes.
Now, Dr. Breus, what % of people in Western society do you believe suffer from sleep challenges?
Oh my gosh, almost everybody. It's kind of kooky, right? I mean, it's nuts. So let's just look at sleep disorders, because I believe that there are things called sleep disorders like apnea, narcolepsy, insomnia, but then there's something else that's called disordered sleep, right? And that's somebody who doesn't necessarily have a diagnosable situation. However, they have a situation in which they wake up and they feel like crap. They're like, what's going on? Like, I used to wake up and feel great, and now I don't anymore. What's happening? So I'm going to talk about sleep disorders first. So sleep disorders, if you look at something like sleep apnea, we think it's somewhere between 10 and 14% of the population. When you look at something like restless leg syndrome, once you get past the age of 50, we're talking about 35% of the population. Narcolepsy, much smaller, about 0.5% of the population. Insomnia, or the inability to fall asleep or stay asleep, at any given time, 30% of the Western society has this, with 10% of it being chronic. If you add up those numbers, honestly, 1 in about 2 people have got something going on with their sleep. Now, if we added in the disordered sleeping universe that's out there, it's pretty much everybody.
You know, what's so funny is I have a good friend who is a New York fashion designer. And she happens to sell on Home Shopping Network.
Sure.
And she said, you would not believe how many people are up at 2 a.m. buying clothes on the internet.
Exactly.
She says everybody's awake.
Yeah, and it's unfortunate because so many people don't value sleep until they're so sleep deprived. They're like, I got to do something. I don't know what to do. My life is terrible. So it's very interesting. The human body can take a lot of abuse. as we know from alcohol and drugs and things like that. But sleep abuse, or the addiction to being awake, if you will, is something that's very, very serious. And it's not like people are looking to do this. It's not like people are coming to me all the time and saying, Michael, I only want to sleep 3 hours a night. They're saying, Michael, I only sleep 3 hours a night. What can I do to get better? So it's a real epidemic, if you will.
Now, Dr. Breus, what happens to our mental and physical health when we do not get enough sleep?
So sleep affects every organ system and every disease state. Literally everything you do better with a good night's rest. There's now data to show that cancer cells multiply faster the more sleep deprived you are. Let's just, right there, cancer, okay? We're talking one of the most devastational diseases that has ever come across mankind. We know that tumor growth expands and metastasization expands the more sleep deprived you are. We know that immune function in general is lowered when we have lower sleep. People are far greater likely to catch a cold. The flu shot is far less effective the more sleep deprived you are. The list goes on and on. We can look at issues like pain. There's a serious amount of data to show if you are sleep deprived, the exact same pain stimulus hurts worse. So even if you're just, you're sitting there with a mild low back pain, when you're sleep deprived, it feels like major low back pain. And that's just on the physical side. Let's get into the mental side of things. We know that sleep dramatically affects things like anxiety. If you're an anxious person and you don't get a lot of sleep, you're a lot more anxious. It also affects depression. If you're a depressed person and you don't have enough sleep, you get more depressed. Any single mental health disorder gets worse with lack of sleep. Everything from addiction to, again, anxiety, depression, you kind of name it. Now let's get into cognition, or our ability to think. We now know sleep deprived, guess what? You're not thinking as clearly or as quickly. You make riskier decisions. Great study out of the University of Las Vegas showed that our decision making is actually riskier the more sleep deprived we are. And then back to the physical is we look at things like reaction time. I work with professional athletes all over the world. And let me tell you something, the difference between being on the podium in the Olympics and off the podium in the Olympics is whether or not you got a good night's sleep the night before.
Yeah, that all makes so much sense. Now, how do we define what actually is a good night's sleep? With so many people having disrupted sleep,
Correct.
What's a good night's sleep?
So first of all, I want to break the myth, okay? 8 hours is a myth, all right? Not everybody needs 8 hours. I'll tell you, me personally, I go to bed around 11:30 midnight. I wake up between 6:15 and 6:30 every day, and I'm the sleep doctor, for goodness sake, right? So my body works very, very well on 6.5 hours of sleep. Not everybody's body needs that amount of time. What I'm trying to get across here is it's an individual number, right? So the first question people are going to want to out there say is, well, how do I figure it out? I have a method. It's very simple. I'm going to share it with everybody now. We know that the average sleep cycle is roughly 90 minutes long, okay? We also know that the average person has 5 of these cycles. So 5 times 90 is 450 minutes of sleep, which translates to roughly 7.5 hours, okay? So first of all, we already broke the myth because it's not 8, it's 7.5. So that's number one. Number two, people have various lengths of their sleep cycle. So here's the experiment that I have people do. Almost everybody has a socially determined wake-up time, meaning what time do you have to get up in the morning to do the stuff you just got to do? So in our house, I wake up right around 6:15 to 6:20 every morning because I know I got to get up because I got to wake up my daughter and my son to help them get ready for school. So when I'm doing that, I have a set wake-up time. So just to make the math simple, let's call it 6:30. If we take that 5 cycles at 90 minutes or 7.5 hours and we count backwards, we go from 6:30 to 11 o'clock. Guess what? 11 o'clock becomes your new bedtime. See, most people don't think about it, but it's the easiest thing for you to control is what time you go to bed. But of course, almost every adult out there, when's the last time somebody told you go to bed? What were you, like 8, right? 9 years old when your mom was like, go to bed, right? Like we don't do that any longer. So if you run this experiment, it gets really interesting. Now I'm going to tell you something. I ran it on myself and it failed. I'm going to explain to you why. Because my sleep cycle doesn't turn out to be 90 minutes. It actually turns out to be 82 minutes long. Now, how on earth would I figure that out? Guys, I work in a sleep lab, okay? So it's not that hard for me to figure it out. But there are lots of trackers that you can get now, the ones that you wear on your wrist. There's rings, there's pads, there's all kinds of different things. But here's the easiest thing that you can do is if I went to bed at 11, hoping to wake up at 6:30, here's what happened. I went to the bed, I woke up at 5:30. I said, what's going on here? I did it a second night, went to bed at 11, woke up at 5:30. So I said, wonder what's going to happen if I wake up at 12. Wake up at 12, I literally wake up a minute before my alarm every single day. So run the experiment on yourself and do it for about 7 days to see if you're waking up naturally within 5 minutes of what your alarm would be going off, you figured out your bedtime. Then it's about consistency. The more consistent you are, the more your circadian rhythm or that internal biological clock knows when to sleep and when to wake. And that's half the battle right there.
That's just such valuable information. Now, Dr. Breus, how do you use natural medicine in your practice?
So for me, it's always about being more natural than being pharmaceutical. As a PhD, I don't prescribe medication. And I will be also honest with you and tell you that 90% of my patients show up on drug. So something. And again, there is a place for medication in sleep. I'm not the guy that says nobody should ever be on a sleep-related pharmaceutical or prescription, because let me tell you something. If you're bipolar and you're not sleeping, you're going to have a manic episode, and that's not something that we want to see happen. So are there prescribed times when people should be on pharmaceutically induced sleep? Yes, there are. Generally speaking, I don't want you to have to do that unless you're in one of those situations. So I use all more natural methods. My favorite, and the one that I'm trained most in, is cognitive behavioral therapy. So cognitive CBT, or cognitive behavioral therapy, helps realign how you think about sleep. And by the way, it works better than pharmaceuticals and lasts longer, because once you know how to think about sleep, that's a skill set that you'll have for the rest of your life. Unfortunately, with the medication, you got a sleep problem and you got a pill problem, because you got to have a pill every single night. And now, again, there are situations where that does make sense. It's a small percentage of the population. Maybe 4 to 5% of the patients that I see really have to be on drug. But if you look at it like that, and you think, well, there's 400 million people in the United States, 5% of that is 20 million people, right? So it starts to make sense why there's lots of people who are taking these medications. But I really prefer the natural ways. And I also prefer supplementation. There's a lot of data that's coming out now showing that certain vitamin deficiencies, certain mineral deficiencies, and certain hormone deficiencies actually have a dramatic effect on your ability to fall asleep and stay asleep at night. For people who are interested in those particular areas, I've written several blogs on my website. So if you have an opportunity, head on over to thesleepdoctor.com, click on the blogs. You can type anything into the search bar and you'll find stuff on everything you could possibly imagine in terms of supplements, ingredients, vitamins, mineral, what have you.
This is such valuable information that our folks who do natural healing are going to want to know all about. Now, I just wanted to share for our audience a story about one of my clients, because so many people will go, well, I don't sleep well. It's a chronic problem. I'm just going to take drugs. So one of my clients, and I'm sure Dr. Breus can probably tell 100 of these stories for every one that I'm telling. Anyway, professional woman, highly successful person, took a commonly prescribed drug for sleep. And long story, she woke up or wasn't fully awake, got in her car. Basically, she was so drugged, she was semi-conscious, got in her car, had a wreck. Her 2 dogs were in the car. The dogs were sent to a kill shelter, and she was so heavily medicated, the officers who came threw her in jail, okay? So this is I'm sure Dr. Breus hears these stories all the time. So she's in jail for 24 hours, and she came to me afterwards completely humiliated. Forget the cost. She said, the worst thing about it, when she was in jail for 24 hours, she said, the worst was I didn't know whether I had injured anybody. Had I hurt anyone?
Oh, yeah.
So
much less what happened to her dogs, right?
Yes. So a friend had to go get her dogs out of the kill shelter, get her dogs out of the kill shelter. She eventually came out. But again, we have to understand, anytime you take any medication, it has effects.
Absolutely.
right? And I'm always telling people, go to rxlist.com, look up the side effects of your medication.
Yeah,
but
right.
most people who are taking drugs are on more than one drug, usually 3 to 5 drugs. And you have to understand how everything interacts. So if you're on multiple psychiatric medications, you want to understand scientifically what the research shows. And there's a wonderful website called epocrates.com where you can see the research on how it all interacts. Now, one of Dr. Breus's major contribution to natural healing is his discovery or description, really, of chronotypes. Now, one of the things that we know is that one of the important aspects of being healthy is rhythm.
Right.
So, Dr. Breus, can you explain for our audience, what are the 4 chronotypes?
Sure. And so my contribution to that, so first of all, chronotypes have been around for a while. If you've never heard of the word chronotype, you probably have, you just don't realize it. If you've ever been called an early bird or a night owl, those are chronotypes. So when we look at the medical sleep literature going back now to the 70s, this was a discovery way back then. Which is actually quite fascinating. They discovered these people who have a tendency to get up early and go to bed early, and then these people who have a tendency to stay up late and wake up late. Now, let's step back now hundreds of years, okay? This would make sense if you were living in a town or a village or in caveman days, and here's why. You want the people who wake up early, they wake up early, they're the hunters. They go out, they get the food, they do all that kind of stuff. The people who are in the middle, right, those are your villagers. These are the people that tend to the village, tend to the children, tend to all the stuff that's going on during the daytime. Then you have to have a security force to guard, right, against threat. Those are your night owls, right? And so from an evolutionary perspective, these 3 categories have been around almost since the dawn of time. My contribution was about insomnia. And so I believe that, and by the way, all 3 of those types are genetic. If you do a 23andMe or Ancestry.com or one of those types of services, you can actually look in your genes. Specifically, the PER3 gene is one of the biggest ones to look at. And it will actually tell you, hey, my body wants to go to bed early and wake up early, or late, or in the middle, or in fact, have insomnia. And so my goal was to add people with insomnia into this mix, because when they look, they're like, I don't know what I am. Well, you might actually be your own category. So what I then did was I said, well, we've got these 4 types, but I'm not a bird. I'm a mammal. I don't like these bird terms. So I chose animals that actually have these circadian rhythms in their lifestyles. So an early bird becomes a lion. These are lions have their first kill before dawn. They go to bed right as the sun goes down. Very different type of person. And by the way, this isn't 100% just based on genetics, but also personality. We know that people who are early birds, they have a tendency to be the COO of a company. They're organizers. They make a list every day, and they go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3. They're like those type A kind of energy personalities, right? Then in the middle, I call them the bears, right? Bears get up when the sun comes up. They go to sleep when the sun goes down. They hibernate. They're kind of more of a general population. By the way, lions make up roughly 15% of the population. Bears make up 55% of the population. 55%. So 1 out of 2 people is a bear. I do think that there are people who are early bears and people who are late bears, meaning people who, while they still fall into the bear category, they like to go to bed a little bit early and get up early, and the same with the night owls. These are my extroverts. These are my people who get work done. They're the people who are inviting you to their home for dinner or buying the drink at the bar, that kind of stuff. Then there are the night owls, which I am a member of. We call them wolves. And so wolves are incredibly nocturnal creatures. They do most of their hunting at night. Most of their security force kind of works around at night. So it's very, very interesting to look at them. My night owls, or my wolves, in fact, are very, very different people. We actually have a tendency to be more introverted. We have a tendency to be very creative. These are my artists, my actors, my authors, people of that nature. So it's very interesting to kind of see the personality characteristics of a lot of these people. And by the way, these people have the worst time of it all. They have the worst immune function because of this affection from their genetics. They have the most likely to catch colds, to have major physical issues going on. And then there are the insomniacs, but I call them dolphins. And the reason I chose dolphins is most people don't know it, but dolphins sleep what's called unihemispherically. So half of the brain is asleep while the other half is awake and looking for predators. And I thought it was kind of a good representation of people who are never quite getting good rest. Their personality characteristics are they're very much like lions. They're go-getters. They're type A personalities. They like to follow a list, but they have a level of anxiety and a little bit of OCD or obsessive compulsiveness that actually drives them in a very different direction than lions. So when you look at it, you can take the quiz at thepowerofwhenquiz.com and you fall into one of these 4 categories. Once we know your category, this is where it gets really cool, is as an example, you're a lion and you're married to a wolf. When do you have sex? Right? How does, like, just logistically, how does something like that work? That's exactly what the book describes. I took 50 different daily activities and then I mapped it out for each one of the chronotypes. And if you're married to a different chronotype or you have a partner with a different chronotype or a relationship with a different chronotype, how to work through some of those struggles.
Yeah, and this is super valuable information. And I remember being at a conference a couple years ago and somebody told me about the powerofwhenquiz.com. I did it. 2 minutes later, I'm like a dolphin. I'm like, oh, that makes sense. My brain, because I'm always like, and I just sort of I relax. It's like, okay, you're not quite ever fully asleep. So yeah. Now, so there's also 5 types of insomnia. So we've got 4 chronotypes. And understanding your type helps you understand how to live your life in a rhythm that's actually healthy for you.
Right.
And I know for myself, I figured out about my writing. When I wake up at 4:35 in the morning, I might as well write. So I write my books, go back to sleep, or get up as time may have it. Right. Now, what are the 5 types of insomnia?
So it's interesting. So there's 2 ways to start to think about insomnia. So there was a recent article that came out from a group where they decided we're going to look at other characteristics of people with insomnia. Historically, when we would categorize insomnia, there are many flavors, if you will, of insomnia. We used to say there were people who can't fall asleep, there are people who can't stay asleep, and there are people who wake up too early. That was the 3 categories, if you will, of how we kind of decided what insomnia was. I never believed those categories. I'll tell you why, is because I primarily see insomnia patients. I've got those 3 types for sure, but I've also got people who, for example, can't sleep because of depression, can't sleep because of anxiety, can't sleep because of pain. Like, the list goes on and on. A fairly recent research study decided to look at none of those characteristics, but started to look at how does stress affect you during the daytime. Was one of the major factors. Another major factor was, do you take things personally when they happen to you? That became another interesting factor. So here's what I can tell you, to be very, very honest. I have no idea how many types of insomnia there really are out there, but what I can tell you is it's not 1 and it's not 3. It's definitely become, and this study just came out within the last 4 or 5 months. So it's, again, very fascinating research. It's kind of one of the things I love about sleep is that we see new stuff all the time in the field. And so it just makes you really think about new and different ways to categorize and think about sleep, which becomes very, very important. Be that as it may, what I would argue is once you can start to discover the root cause or causes of your insomnia, like let's say you've got anxiety and you have multiple awakenings throughout the night and you have issues with pain, which is, by the way, a lot of people out there, then we can develop a specific protocol for that. But just going to the store and taking a PM whatever and popping it in your mouth and basically sledgehammering yourself to sleep, number 1, doesn't work very well and doesn't work for very long because you're really not attacking the root cause of what's happening. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And I remember a couple of years ago, the city of Atlanta did road work outside my home, and they damaged the road in front of my home. And my neighbors and I all had, I kid you not, we all had earthquake meters on our phones. Wow. Because our houses were literally shaking. Oh, and I remember at first I took, some natural stuff to sleep. And I thought, this is ridiculous. Then I started meditating as if my life depended on it. I've never meditated so much in my entire life. And fortunately, they fixed the road. But
Right.
it was quite interesting to go through that. Now, we talked about some of the dangers of pharmaceutical sleep medications, but we want to be compassionate. You talked about 4 to 5% of the population really does need drugs to sleep. When do people really need the drugs to sleep?
That's a great question. So when do people actually, so I know, and just to clarify, are we talking about pharmaceutical intervention, over the counter, or supplementation? Because those can be three different things.
Let's talk about drugs first, and then the over-counter, and then supplements.
So when we're looking at is a sleep medication appropriate for you? Here's where I like to, and by the way, there's two categories of that inside. I'm not trying to get complicated. I'm just trying to be effective here. Is one is you have a medical situation that is causing insomnia, right? So you have pain that you cannot stop. You have paranoid schizophrenia. You are bipolar. Those are very well defined, and your physician who is treating you will actually will already know, because it's developed into the protocols for that type of treatment, to add a sleeping pill or understanding that kind of thing there. There is, however, another instance that I think could be used better by physicians and could be much more effective. And that's to use a pharmaceutical to break the cycle of insomnia. Let's be very, very clear here. Pharmaceuticals work, and they work very well and very quickly. That's why so many people take them. The problem is that many physicians have never been trained about what to do next. Insomnia historically has been called what we call in the field a door handle diagnosis. And what we mean by that is, as the doctor or nurse has got their hand on the door leaving the patient room, the patient says, "Oh, one more thing, I sleep like crap. Can you help me with that?" Right? And so there's no time left. They write a prescription for a benzodiazepine or a non-benzo hypnotic, and they hand it to them and they say, "Here's a 30, 60, 90-day supply, right? Come back in 3 months." The problem is that while that might be effective in breaking the cycle, you never teach the patient what to do next. That's where people like me come in. And so understanding that there's a time-limited basis for the use of a pharmaceutical, again, to break that cycle of insomnia, becomes an incredibly effective tool if you've got a patient who's willing to use that pharmaceutical and then become tapered off of that pharmaceutical. I'll be honest with you, I have never been able to taper somebody off in less than about 4 to 5 months. So once you get on it, you need to expect to be on it for a period of time. You'll probably be on it at full strength for between 2 and 3 months, because we've got to get that full cycle. It takes almost 28 days for a habit to initiate itself. But with sleep, and especially with women with sleep, another factor that almost nobody talks about is menstrual cycle. And how does menstrual cycle affect your sleep? So we really have to be very careful. So what I've discovered is roughly 3 months on drug and then a 2 to 3 month taper makes a lot of sense. So what I do is I work with a physician who's prescribing that medication, and then I'm kind of the protocol guy who comes in and says, "Okay, now we're going to set your bedtime. Okay, now we're going to learn what your chronotype is. Now we're going to learn what your habits are. Now we're going to change your bedroom environment." Those are the types of things that you've got to do in order to actually have an effective use of a pharmaceutical and get off of it, right? Because quite frankly, I don't know anybody who wants to be on sleeping pills for the rest of their lives, right? That's in the pharmaceutical range. And by the way, there are many different types of pharmaceuticals for sleep. There are things called non-benzodiazepine hypnotics, Ambien, Lunesta, Restoril. Restoril is a benzodiazepine. Then you get into the more addictive, which are Restoril, Xanax, Valium, those kind of things. Some people have even gotten to using opioids. Like, it's a mess over in that universe. Now, when we move to the OTCs, or the over-the-counters, it's a little bit different world. Everything that you say that's got a PM associated with it usually has Benadryl in it. Benadryl is just diphenhydramine. It's an antihistamine. It's used for nasal congestion and clearing out your sinuses, but it gives you fuzzy drug head, which makes you feel sleepy, which makes you fall asleep. I used to be, for 15 years, I was the medical sleep expert for WebMD for sleep. And once a month, we would get a question from a viewer that would ask, "Is it okay to take a box of Benadryl a night?"
Oh.
A box, 18 10 milligram tabs. Okay, the answer is no, that is not okay. right? But here's what happens. One works, and then 3 days later it doesn't. So you take two. Two works, and then 4 days later it doesn't work. And so you take four. Before you know it, you got a fistful of Benadryl in your hand every night, or you're crushing it up and putting it in your whatever and trying to get yourself to sleep. That is not the game to play. Also, by the way, the compound itself was built to last for 12 hours. Nobody buys Benadryl to only work for 6 or 7 hours, right? It's a 12-hour compound. So guess what? When you take it at 10 o'clock at night, it's still on board at 10 o'clock the next day. Well, that's where that whole fuzzy head comes in, and you're driving to work or what have you. It really kind of becomes a mess. I'm not saying that these over-the-counters are terrible for everyone. There are some people who, if they only need something to help them sleep, for example, if they travel or maybe 3 to 5 nights a month, there's nothing wrong with them. I would tell you, however, you want to stay away from things like Tylenol on a regular basis. There's a lot of research to show that everyday use of Tylenol, or even multiple days of a week use of Tylenol, can really be bad for your liver. So you might as well just use Benadryl at that point, quite frankly. I prefer moving over into the supplement world. There's multiple reasons, but let's just be very clear here. Pharmaceutically induced sleep is very different than naturally induced sleep. It just is, right? I can show it to you on an EEG or brain waves or however you want to argue the point, but it's just different. So I like to move in the natural realm because very few people out there have what I call a broken sleeper, right? That switch in their head doesn't work. Almost nobody has that. There is actually a kind of an interesting one that's called fatal familial insomnia. It's incredibly rare. You have to be part of a family of Italians from a very specific town in Italy because it's a genetic disorder. But every time somebody does a story about it, a million people come out of the woodwork saying that they've got fatal familial insomnia. Trust me, you don't. But if you're looking for supplements and understanding what you need to look at, a couple of basic things. Number one, magnesium. Magnesium is one of my favorite things to ask people to try, and here's why. Our bodies don't produce magnesium. We have to eat it. And if you could eat a bushel of kale a day and you're not going to get your magnesium because our soil has been so over-tilled that the magnesium minerals are not getting up into the plants that we're eating any longer. So magnesium supplementation is certainly something that could be very, very valuable for people. And by the way, that's oftentimes better at night than in the morning times. It does have a slight calming effect, but just having it on board on a regular basis is great. I personally take magnesium every single day. It's also good for things like cardiac issues and things of that nature. Obviously, talk with your doctor before you jump on board, but I have an entire blog about magnesium. Another one is vitamin D3. Almost everybody out there is deficient in vitamin D. I lived in Arizona for 10 years and I was deficient. I mean, I was in the valley of the sun and I couldn't get enough vitamin D, right? So looking at D3 in particular, and this is something you can buy at your local CVS or Walgreens. You don't have to have some specialty vitamin D out there, but 5,000 international units is what my doctor thought would be the best for me. So that's what I personally take each day. Again, something to think about or talk about with your doctor. It also turns out that the omegas are great for sleep. We now have seen data to show that omegas are good for helping your circadian rhythm in a very particular way. And so making sure that you have enough of a level of omegas in you is good. And then finally, vitamin B turns out to be the regulator of REM sleep and deeper sleep. And so making sure that your body has enough vitamin B, particular kinds of vitamin B, is going to be important. I understand that there might be people out there who have the MTHFR genetic variation for vitamin B who can't methylate. There are now products on the market. I don't know exactly what all of them are, so it may be worth investigating for yourself, but having that vitamin B regularly working for you can be very helpful as well.
And I just want to point out for our audience, it's super important that you do not take your vitamin B in the afternoon or evening.
That's correct, because it's super energy.
Yes, it will wake you up.
Absolutely. Very good point.
Yeah, so you want to take your vitamin B complex in the morning, but some of these other things like magnesium, you can definitely take at night. Right. What about CBD oil for sleeping and melatonin? What are your thoughts on those?
Absolutely. So let's talk about melatonin first, then we'll talk about CBD. So melatonin is a sleep regulator, not a sleep initiator. Melatonin affects your circadian rhythms. It does not make you feel sleepy. That's number one. Most melatonin is sold in an overdosage format. The appropriate dose, just to get plasma concentration levels to where you want them to be, is somewhere between 0.5 and 1.5 milligrams. So most of it is sold in 3, 5s, and 10s. More is not better here. By the way, this is a hormone. Melatonin is a hormone. It is not an herb. It is not a substrate. It is a hormone. You wouldn't just walk down to the local health food store and buy testosterone or estrogen, right? It's on that level. So if you're going to be using melatonin, you really want to speak with your doctor about it. Also, there was a recent study that came out in the last 2 years that showed that when they took 20 bottles of melatonin off the shelf, various brands, almost none of them had exactly what they said on the label. So consistency becomes an issue as well. Melatonin is not, I repeat, not for use in children. Anybody under the age of 18 really doesn't need to be putting a hormone into their system, especially females, right? I can't think of anything worse for a young developing female body to be instituting a hormone into that system. Now, there's a caveat here that I want to be very clear about, and that's children who are on the autism spectrum, just who have autism or are part of that spectrum. For some reason, and a very high dose, 4 to 5 milligrams, according to the literature, has been shown to be extremely effective with that group of individuals. So generally speaking, nobody under 18, if you've got a child on the spectrum, it might be something worth investigating and talking about with your doctor. The biggest problem with melatonin, quite frankly, is it's not regulated by the FDA. I could make it in my garage and I could sell it at the local health food store, and that would be a perfectly legal thing to do. And that's just not where we really want to see people kind of doing that sort of thing. And then finally, what's it best used for? Jet lag, really. If you're crossing time zones on a regular basis, melatonin is definitely your friend because it helps reset your circadian rhythm. But if that's the only thing that you're taking for sleep, then I would argue that you probably aren't going to need it. When we're talking about CBD, this is a whole new area. For folks out there who want to get super detailed, if you just go to Google and type in CBD for sleep, my blog comes up #1. You'll learn as much about it as you've ever wanted to know. But we really are starting to understand more about this area of what we call inflammation, right? And so historically, when you thought about something being inflamed, you thought about being swollen, right? So I hurt my wrist and my wrist swells up. That's inflammation. It turns out there's another type of inflammation that's inside your body, right? And so this can happen from a disrupted microbiome, a disrupted gut, causes a level of inflammation that becomes systemic or body-wide. This is where we start to see some very interesting things happen, and they're not good. We start to see a level of insomnia get worse. We see levels of apnea get worse. This is all super cutting-edge research now. So this is the newest of the new. We don't have a lot of definitive answers surrounding this, but what we are learning is that the regular use of CBD for people with insomnia can actually be quite helpful. And full transparency, I have my own line of sleep supplements. One's called Active Sleep Booster. It's got CBD and melatonin both in them. Why? Because it's designed for a very specific type of person. I have another line called Sleep Doctor PM that has no CBD, and one of them has no melatonin, because you would never, by the way, want to take melatonin in the middle of the night. You would only want to take it at the beginning of the night. And by the way, you want to take it about 60 minutes before you go to sleep if you're taking it in pill format, because it takes that long for plasma concentration levels to reach the brain. If you're using a tincture or a spray, you can take it about 20 minutes before bed.
This is all incredibly valuable information. Now, let's go back to melatonin being a hormone. And
Yeah.
one of the things that we know about hormones is that you can't alter any hormone in your body without affecting all the other hormones, right?
That's correct.
So how does taking melatonin affect our estrogen as well as our thyroid hormones? Because my understanding is that it can.
That it can or cannot?
That it can, absolutely.
It does, absolutely. Again, the introduction of a hormone. So the thing that people need to remember is hormones are messengers, right? They tell different parts of the body what to do. And estrogen and testosterone are also hormones that are affected by the mere presence of melatonin. So again, popping a melatonin every night while you think it's a natural, okay thing to do, you could be doing you could be giving signals to all other areas of your body that aren't necessarily what you want to have happen. Now, there is a common misconception that I've looked at, which is people say, well, if I'm taking 5 milligrams of melatonin, which is 5 times the recommended dose, is that going to make my brain no longer produce it? Because that does happen with other hormones like testosterone and estrogen. To date, we have not seen that to occur. To date, we have not seen it where people's melatonin production stops or ceases when people are taking what we call exogenous or external melatonin. So that's a little bit of a myth, at least as far as the research is concerned now. Also, on the melatonin front, I would tell you that once my patients reach about age 50, 55, we do start to see a decline in melatonin production. And so many of my patients who are of that age range are actually taking a melatonin supplementation.
And so you're recommending, if you do take melatonin, to take 1.5 milligrams, right?
That is correct.
Smaller amounts.
Absolutely. Okay. More is not better. Less is better in this situation.
Now, one of the things that we know is that the quality of our sleep affects our ability to lose weight and also our insulin handling. So, and of course, so many of our audience has difficulty losing weight. How does sleep affect weight loss, and what would you recommend for someone who's trying to lose weight or trying to achieve their ideal body size as far as sleep goes?
Sure. So I wrote, my second book was called The Sleep Doctor's Diet, Lose Weight Through Better Sleep. And I really examined the relationship between the metabolic process and sleep. And so here's what the literature would tell us, is that the more sleep deprived you become, the worse it gets. And I'm going to get a little on the technical side now, but just hear me out. When you become sleep deprived, your cortisol level rises. Why? Because your body is saying, why am I still awake? There must be some threat around, because cortisol is the fight or flight hormone. And this is something that happens without you knowing it. But when you're awake, your body all of a sudden becomes on high alert. The thing that's important here is that cortisol actually increases appetite as well. So as soon as you become sleep deprived, your appetite goes up. Second thing that happens is two other hormones are affected, something called leptin and something called ghrelin. Ghrelin, which I call the go hormone, is that hormone that tells you to eat more. That raises by almost 20% as you become more sleep deprived. So now you've got high appetite and you've got high what we call hunger. Hunger and appetite turn out to be two completely different processes in the brain. Leptin is the hormone that tells you that you're full. You have 15% less leptin the more sleep deprived you are. And your metabolism slows down when you become sleep deprived because your body's trying to conserve resources. So in review, when you become sleep deprived, your cortisol goes up, which increases your appetite. Your ghrelin goes up, which increases your hunger. Your leptin goes down, so you don't feel full, and your metabolism goes down. So you're packing on the pounds. I mean, honestly, I can't think of a worse situation for trying to lose weight than when you're sleep deprived. Every diet out there honestly needs a sleep program associated with it.
This is very, very valuable information, and this is a missing ingredient, like you said. So many people just go work out at the gym or starve yourself, and that's not going to work if you're chronically sleep deprived. Correct. So for our audience members who are trying to achieve their ideal size, what do you recommend as far as how to go about improving their sleep?
Absolutely, and then I'm going to have to jump. I've got 5 different things that I want people to do, and they're easy. This is a 5-step program that everybody out there can do. Step 1 is pick one sleep schedule and stick to it, right? So remember we were talking about the bedtime calculator? I think everybody out there should figure that one out and keep a consistent sleep schedule even on the weekends. I know that stinks. If you wake up at 6:30 during the week, you don't want to wake up at 6:30 on the weekends. Do it anyway. Your body thrives off that level of consistency. It is the single best thing you could possibly do for your sleep, is to have one sleep schedule. Step number 2 has to do with caffeine. You want to limit caffeine by about 2 p.m. Caffeine has a half-life of between 6 and 8 hours. And so we know that that has effect on not just the quantity of sleep or your ability to fall asleep, but the quality of the sleep that you have as well. There are many people out there who say, Michael, I can drink a cup of coffee at dinner and fall right to sleep. If I stick electrodes on your head, I promise you ain't getting good quality sleep. So step 2 is to stop caffeine by 2 p.m. Step 3 has to do with alcohol. The number 1 sleep aid in the world is alcohol, and it's not that great for sleep. 1 drink is fine. 2 drinks at dinner is probably okay. Once you pass that, that's when you're getting into the realm of the difference between going to sleep and passing out, right? Passing out ain't good. So what you want to do is, it takes the human body approximately 1 hour to digest 1 alcoholic beverage. So for every drink, you need to have an hour. So if you have 2 drinks at dinner and you stop drinking at 8, you can't go to bed before 10. So plan it out in an appropriate way and you'll be fine. But as a general rule, I tell people step 3 is to stop drinking 3 hours before lights out. Step 4 has to do with exercise. The single best way for you to improve the quality of your sleep is with daily exercise. I'm not talking about running a marathon here. 20 minutes, some type of cardio, as long as it's approved by your doctor, you will absolutely positively see an improvement in your overall levels of sleep. Step number 5 actually has to do with sunshine. I say give the sun a high five every morning, meaning get 15 minutes of direct sunlight if you can. I get it if you're in the Northeast and there's an Arctic storm that has shown up. I'm not saying go outside. Stand by the window. Get that sunlight. If you can't get sunlight because it's dark and dreary, and you live in, for example, a place like Seattle that's got a lot of cloud cover, buy a light box. They're less than $100. You can get them on Amazon. They're awesome. I use them all the time when I travel, and they're fantastic. So in summary, step number 1, stick to one sleep schedule. Use the bedtime calculator to help you out. Step number 2, stop caffeine by 2 p.m. Step number 3, stop alcohol 3 hours before bed. Step number 4 is exercise daily. And the 4 part has to do with when you want to stop your exercise. Exercise too close to bedtime can, in fact, make it difficult to fall asleep. So if you can stop exercise 4 hours before bed, you're in good shape. And step number 5 is to give the sun a high five each day. And I promise it will help reset that circadian rhythm.
This is all incredibly valuable information. You can find out more about Dr. Michael Breus and his important work at thesleepdoctor.com, or read his 3 best-selling books, Good Night, The Sleep Doctor's Diet Plan, and The Power of When. You've been listening to the Natural Healing Show for UK Health Radio. I'm your host, Catherine Carrigan, medical intuitive healer and Amazon #1 best-selling author. Find out more about me and my work at catherinecarrigan.com. And while you're there, definitely sign up for my newsletter so you can learn even more about how to heal yourself naturally. And remember that one of the foundation elements that you need to heal yourself naturally is to make sure you get a good night's sleep. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you next time.